Hey everyone, it's Miss Spencer. Today we'll be learning how to create and interpret line plots. We're going to start by creating a line plot for this problem here. It says the chart to the right shows how many hours each student watched anime for over the weekend. Use the information to create a line plot. Then use the line plot to answer the questions on the next slide. So this chart on the right shows us how long each student watched anime for. We can see that a lot of these fractions have a denominator of 4, but not all of them. Creedy and Mark have a denominator of 2. Let's rewrite 1/2 so that the denominator is 4. Well, we know that 3 and 1/2 is the same as 3 and 2/4. So Creedy watched anime for 3 and 2/4 hours. Let's do the same for Mark. He watched for 4.5 hours. We can rewrite that as 4 and 2/4 hours. Now that all of our fractions have a denominator of 4, we can create our line plot and plot each of these points on the line plot. We're going to create our number line down here and find the smallest fraction on our data. We can see that Creedy watched anime for 3 and 2/4 hours. That's the shortest amount of time. So we need to start our number line at 3 so that we're able to plot 3 and 2/4. Let's continue on this number line. 1 more than 3 would be 4, and then 1 more than 4 would be 5. We know that we're going to stop at 5 because that's enough numbers on the number line for us to plot. We can check that by finding the biggest amount of time that someone watched anime, which would be Cayenne. Cayenne watched anime for 4 and 3/4 hours. So if we had stopped at just 4 on our number line, we wouldn't be able to plot 4 and 3/4 because that's going to be about here in between 4 and 5. That's why our number line needs to go all the way to 5. Now we can go ahead and split up or break up each of these wholes into 4 equal parts. We know we're going to break these wholes into 4 equal parts because our denominators are all 4. So we can break 3 and 4 into 4 equal parts and 4 and 5 into 4 equal parts. Now let's label each tick mark. So here we know that each tick mark is going to represent 1 more fourth. So if we have 3 here and we add 1 more fourth, we now have 3 and 1/4. 1 more fourth would be 3 and 2/4. 1 more fourth would be 3 and 3/4. And 1 more fourth would be 3 and 4/4, which is the same as 4 wholes. Let's do the same. Add 1 more to 4 and we have 4 and 1/4. Add another fourth and that's 4 and 2/4. Add another fourth, that's 4 and 3/4. And add another fourth, that's 4 and 4/4, which is the same as 5 wholes. Now that we've labeled our number line, we can plot these points to create our line plot. I like to go in order and just start at the very top. We have Ephraim here who watched anime for 4 and 2/4 hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot a X or a point above 4 and 2/4. This X that we just plotted represents how long Ephraim watched anime for. I always like to check it off so that when I'm finished plotting a point, so I accidentally don't plot it twice. Now let's move on to Cayenne. She watched anime for 4 and 3/4 hours. So I'm going to look on my number line and see where 4 and 3/4 is, which is right here. And I'll put an X above 4 and 3/4. And then I'm going to cross it off or put a check next to it. Mason watched anime for 4 hours. So I'm going to find 4 on my number line, which is right here, and put an X above it, and then put a check mark next to his name. Prakriti watched anime for 3 and 2/4 hours. So I'm going to find 3 and 2/4, which is the same as 3.5, and I'm going to put an X above it to represent Prakriti. Next is Mateo. He watched anime for 3 and 3/4 hours. So I'm going to find 3 and 3/4, which is right here, and place an X above it. This represents how long Mateo watched anime for. And I'm going to check him off. Finally, Mark watched anime for 4 and 2/4 hours. So I'm going to find 4 and 2/4. Oh, but there's already an X above it. When that happens, we would put Mark's X above the X that's already there. So this X is going to represent how long Mark watched anime for. And I'm going to check him off. I can see that I've put an X on my line plot to represent each person or each student. There are 6 students and there are 6 X's because each X represents how long each student watched anime for. Now let's use this line plot to answer some questions. So this is the same line plot that we just created on the previous slide. Let's look at the first question. It says, what is the longest time a person watched anime? So I'm going to look at my number line here, and I'm going to try to find the biggest mixed number, the biggest number that has at least one X above it. Ooh, and that's here. 4 3/4 is the biggest number that has at least one person that watched that amount of time. So I know 4 3/4 is the longest amount of time that someone watched anime. 5 is the biggest number on this line plot here, but nobody watched that for that long because there's no X's above it. Someone did watch for 4 3/4 hours, and that's why that's the longest amount of time that someone watched anime. Now let's try to find the shortest amount of time someone watched anime. So I'm going to look on my number line for the smallest number that has an X above it, and that would be 3 2/4. We can see that there's an X above it, meaning that someone watched anime for 3 2/4 hours. So 3 2/4 hours is the shortest amount of time someone watched anime. 3 and 3 1/4 are smaller, but nobody watched anime for that short amount of time. So that's why it's not the shortest amount of time that someone watched anime here. Now let's find the difference, which is subtraction, between the longest amount of time and the shortest amount of time that someone watched anime. So I'm going to take my longest amount, which is 4 3/4, and I'm going to subtract 3 2/4. And when I do that, I have 1 1/4 hours. So that means that the person that watched for the longest amount of time watched for 1 1/4 hours longer than the person that watched the shortest amount of time. Finally, we're going to answer one more question. What amount of time was most frequently watched? That means we're going to try to find the number on our number line here that has the most X's above it. That would be 4 2/4. There are 2 X's above 4 2/4, meaning that 2 students watched this for this amount of time. So when it's asking what amount of time was most frequently watched, that means which amount of time was did most students watch for? And that would be 4 2/4 hours because it has the most X's above it.